Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, you should subscribe for more Shadows House reaction and discussion videos. Today I am going to be doing my biggest moments, my coolest moments reactions to Shadows House, and then afterwards we're going to have a discussion about the episode as a whole, so I hope that you guys will enjoy. I'm super excited because this episode is called Outside the Room, and so I'm like, we are going outside! Like, I'm so excited to see, like, this world, like, open up and everything. Like, I am, like, so hyped right now. If you guys want to see my full reaction, remember that you guys can check out the Patreon or becoming a YouTube membership member, which now has a link in the description. Ooh, I didn't have that before, so yeah. So you can just click on those and then click the tier. It is the Royal Advisors tier, and then it's a you press play when I press play sort of thing, so it's a full-length subtitle and timer reaction, so you can sync up with me and see my full reaction. But if you're cool with what we have now, just share this video around. We need more, like, Shadows House fans to, like, come in here. Last week's video was actually, like, really good. Like, it did better than My Hero Academia, so I was like, let's go, right? Because I was so worried because nobody seems to be talking about the show, and I'm just like, I just want to make, like, a little haven where we can all talk about the show. But I don't know, like, if this is gonna be, like, the big, like, eye-catching anime of the season, even though, like, maybe people should start to pay a little attention, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that is it for me, guys. Let us get into the reaction now. Let's go. Uh-oh. I feel like Kate does not feel very nice about herself. This isn't good. Aww. Wake up, bitch! No. Okay, I thought she was gonna be like, what do you call it? Like, roll out the covers or something. Oh, I see. She's waiting for her to wake up. Oh, here we go! Oh my god! Yeah, buddy! Oh my god! I'm so excited! Like, I want to know! Oh my goodness! Aw! Aw, hi Mia! I think Mia's the one that I didn't see before, but I saw now this time. Oh my god! But what happened to the doll that glared at you? Like, what? That was just dropped from yesterday? What happened? Oh, so she doesn't know who she doesn't know who she has? She doesn't know she serves Kate? Oh my god. Oh my god, there's so many! Oh my god, there's so many! Oh my god, like there's a lot, like there's a lot. Like there's a lot. Oh my gosh. There's like 4? But are these, oh my god. Oh, I've never like heard singing in the anime. Like, you know what I mean? Like characters actually sing before. Oh. 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 This could be propaganda, though. I shouldn't be saying aw too fast. Like, this could be like Shadows House propaganda. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of what it sounds like. Oh. I wonder about that little doll. But the dolly got wet. Uh-oh, I don't think that's a solution. Uh-oh, that's not good. This is not good. Oh. Oh. Oh, Emily, oh no. Up outside again. Please be careful, sis. Like, girl, could not be me. Like, that's so dangerous. Maybe that's what happened. Oh no. What if that's what happened to the doll that glared at her? She got hurt or something and they had to fix her. Like she's gonna like hurt herself out the window. Oh no, sis. And Kate doesn't seem that worried. Oh no, no. Wait, no! Oh girl! How far is it off the ground? Oh god. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. She does not look nice. Oh, your debut. There's supposed to be something. Oh, she has a different outfit than her. Oh, things are tense. Wait, what? The doll mimics her. Whoa! Wow! That's not nice! Maybe that's why she doesn't go outside. Uh-oh. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! This is so fucked up! Whoa! It's like they only have autonomy when their shadow's not around. Oh no! This is bad. But nobody told her that she had to mimic her face. Oh my god, so we do get a post-credit. Last time we didn't. Oh yeah, so now, what if we see what she's like? Because I doubt they mimic all the time. Oh, so she's going back to her own room. So maybe she's like sad. She's just like, oh my god, what the heck? Why is there all the soot in her room? Did she get chewed out? I don't like that. All right, everybody, let us get into the discussion now. Now, this is really the episode that cemented that I just want everyone I know to watch this show. This is basically the episode that did that, and so I'm so excited to talk about it. But I've been telling everyone, I'm like other Ruby tubers, I've been trying to get them to watch it. I've been trying to get my boyfriend to watch it. Like, I've been trying to get everyone to watch this show just because I'm enjoying it so much, and like this episode was so like freaky, but also so compelling. And so yeah, why don't we just jump into it? And we start with the soot situation. And so we get basically Kate's account of what happens when she wakes up and how she feels about it. And I think that this is really interesting just from the perspective of how this may be affecting her self-esteem. Like she says, you know, her night clothes are dirty, the bed is dirty, like whatever one touches gets dirty. And then it cycles through a bunch of different objects basically. And I'm sort of wondering like how that is affecting her self-esteem. You know, like on a metaphorical level, it's kind of like you make a mess wherever you go. Like how is that affecting like how she thinks of herself and her mental health and things like that? And so I think that that's definitely an interesting question. And so we pan over to a couple different objects here, and so we see the pen, and I don't know if all of them are gonna have some type of significance, but if I had to guess, the quill is reminding me of the fact that she's teaching Emily Coe to read and what they could find out like through her being able to read, if that makes sense, because this whole thing is like, oh, Emily Coe can't read this paper, which probably has more information about like the debut on it or something else, right? And so what I'm sort of thinking is that this quill is almost representative of that. Like she's teaching Emily Coe to read and write, and how reading and writing will be important later, because it's not just reading, it's also writing. Like at the end of this episode, we see Emily Coe basically like writing down a bunch of different things in a journal and everything like that. And so I'm sort of wondering if that's like a connection, and it's almost like this is like a elegant feather pen, but meanwhile Emily Coe has this like, I don't know, it looks like a crayon almost, like the pen that she has later in the episode. So that's what I'm thinking about the feather. Then we have the doorknob. Obviously, I think that this is actually not the bathroom door, but I think that this is the door that she leaves out of later, because I was looking for a door everywhere. Like I was trying to find her way out. Like I was trying to see like, oh, like is there a door over here? Is there a door over there? Like I was basically like looking for the door like as an exit to her room. And so I think that this may be foreshadowing to the fact that she leaves her room later in this episode. It could be the bathroom doorknob also, like just to represent represent like, oh, like that is how like she basically like gets all the access soot off, it seems, and everything like that. But we have the doorknob. We have this plate. I don't know. It's just a plate. Sometimes like plates will have designs on them, like a family crest or something, but I don't know. We would have to see this plate when it's clean to know if it's any significance or if it's just like an object, but it could be kind of representing like, oh, like this is the Shadows family, right? So like that's sort of the family crest, if that makes sense. Then we pan back to Kate again. She's like looking at her hands, and it's almost a like what am I? Like what have I done? Like am I a monster? Sort of like looking down at your hands look. And so again, I wonder like how she actually feels about this, like how she thinks of herself or how she may think of herself. And so this was really interesting. So I had to pause. You guys can see I had to pause to see this one because this was really hard to get to. And this seems to be a photo of somebody, and so like they're in like shadow though, and so that's sort of the interesting part. Is it reminds me of in the first episode the portraits that are being made of like the butterfly lady and then the older adult woman that are in the blue dress. And so I wonder if they're actually like drawn or like painted, I guess I should say, like if their portraits are not made with their human form but with their shadow form. And if that's the case, like who is this that there is a photo of him in Kate's room? Because one of you guys actually clarified for me last week, because I asked, not everyone in the Shadows family is actually related, like I guess in the biological sense, because I did ask that, like is like the you know, the blue gown lady, like is that Kate's mom, for example? And you know, you guys were kind of like, obviously nobody wants to spoil me, right? But basically like not everyone is related in the way that you're thinking of, Cal. And that was actually really helpful. But now I'm sort of wondering if some people could be related but then some people aren't, if that makes sense. So maybe this guy is actually Kate's dad, and there are like moms and dads and stuff. It's just like not all of them are related, as in like every single Shadow family member is related to Kate, whether it's her cousin or her aunt and her uncle or something. Like that does not seem to be the case. Given that there's a photo of somebody, I would say that it could be likely that this is actually like someone of importance. It could also be like the grandfather that they mention as well in this episode, so maybe all of them have a photo of the grandfather, but he doesn't look so, you know, grand, if that makes sense. Like he doesn't look very, I don't know how to explain it. Like you have very extraordinary or extravagant outfits in this episode, right? And so like he just doesn't look very extravagant to me. Like think about the butterfly like lady and her clothing and everything, and even like the person with the headdress that we see in last episode, and then I think we may see them in the, like I think that we always see them in, it's either the OP or the ending song anyway. I don't know if we actually saw them like for them in this episode, but you know what I mean? Like it just seems to me like this is, I don't know, like this speaks more casually to me, that this is not grandfather. Like grandfather should be wearing something as fancy as like the headdress person, right? That we see in the OP or in the end song. And so yeah, that is sort of my thoughts on him. Then we see the doll houses, and this is sort of also making me wonder whether or not, even though we do seem to be in a castle, if the castles are like separate somehow. And what I mean by this is that in the end song you have this shot of like all of the kids. So there's I think there's Lou, there's the like all of the other dolls, like all the new dolls. I can't remember everyone's names yet. And we also haven't seen either of the boys, and then we didn't get, I don't think that we got the girl's name that ran past in this episode. But yeah, so in the end song we see a bunch of different like squares, or like, you know, like in the windows of the house. And so I'm sort of wondering if there are other squares elsewhere, if that makes sense. And so even though it's a castle, like this section of the castle is sort of like their section, like the ones that haven't debuted yet, but then there's a debut section and then there's an adult section. That's what the multiple houses sort of spoke to me as, because you can see like in the end song that they're all in these little like cubicles, almost these little apartments, right? And like somebody is looking in, and like it's just like one little house, right? And then somebody's like looking into the house and seeing like only them. They're not also spying on the adults or anything. And so I think that the multiple houses could be an indication of that sort of like separate house thingy. Like maybe there are 5 more people of Sarah's age, Sarah and Mia's age, and like that's another house, and then there's the adults and that's another house. Like it seems like we are going with groups of 5 for the important main characters, just because I think among the adults, there were actually like 5 adults and then the person with the headdress in the OP. I'll have to check on that, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on the house thing. I think that it speaks to the OP and how like you have that house where somebody is like looking in and almost spying on all the characters who just got their dolls. That's how I sort of see it. Then we have this painting over here, and I don't think that it's as important necessarily as some of the other stuff. Like obviously that photo of the shadow guy, like that made my like wheels turn, if that makes sense. Like maybe this isn't as important, but I would say that it does give an indication of the outside world. And even though we have seen like shrubs, I guess like a garden, we haven't really seen like the outside world in the sense of like lush trees and like sprawling fields and everything. I think that we do get to see the outside a little bit though in this episode. Like obviously we have like the garden, but I think that they pan to like outside of the house a couple times, and so I'll have to look around, but like there doesn't seem to be a place that is depicted in the painting, and so I feel like that the painting sort of speaks to like freedom. You have this like sprawling field and this big tree, and it's probably sunny, I'm assuming, in this painting, whereas like all of the outside shots that we have been shown have been like dark and gray, and the trees kind of look like not dead, but like sort of that fall vibe where like the trees are a little like scary, like it doesn't look like lush, if that makes sense. And so yeah, that's just sort of what I'm thinking, and we'll have to look in the garden again a little bit because there are hedges, but I didn't think that I saw any flowers. There probably are, but I'm saying that I think that that's interesting how like lifeless things are sometimes. There were some other objects, but I don't think that they were as important. Like you have like the bathtub tap, for example, and I think obviously like that's like how she like gets clean. And so I don't think that there's anything else that really like caught my attention, but we saw as Kate's thinking about this, she's actually emitting more soot. And so we can see again, if she only does that when she feels negative emotions, she is associating negativity with what she is talking about, with everything getting dirty, right? And so I think that that is some insight into how she feels about all this, and I wonder if that'll be explored at a later time. So we pass by some more objects here, and the only one that really stood out to me in this section was this one, the dolls, and then I think that it may pan to the book. This just because it kind of looks like an urn, like something that you would keep ashes in. I don't know exactly like where we would be going with that yet, but I just thought that that was sort of interesting that there's something that is very like urn-like. But yeah, it was just something that I was thinking about, just because if we have a photo of a man where we could be like, like that could be her father, like in a sense, it's sort of like, okay, well, where's Kate's mom? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, Kate's mom may not be doing so hot, you know? And we heard about the fact that like shadows and dolls are disposed of by grandfather, and so it's just like, this does not make me feel happy inside. Then we have the doll. Now I thought what was interesting about this was that I think that it is foreshadowing in a sense to the scene with Mia and Sarah. I think that's her shadow's name is Sarah, right? And so you have the dolls, and so you have these two dolls that almost look like perfect copies of each other, except they're wearing different clothes. Now, obviously, in that scene, Mia and Sarah were wearing different clothes, but they were doing the exact same mannerisms. But something else that I thought was interesting was that there is like a slight difference here. Like, it seems like there's a difference in hair color, and not only that, but also like bangs. Like, this doll doesn't have bangs, whereas this one does. And so, yeah, I just thought that that was a little thing that could be like a reference to Sarah and Mia's scene later in the episode. But I also think that it's interesting that even though they look very similar, they have like differences, right? They have slight differences that you can observe. And so I think that that will be important for contextualizing their interactions and like how we see Mia, for example, right? Like how we see her when she's not, I guess, mimicking. And then even in that mimic scene, it's very hard to look at because you can sort of tell that she's doing it, but there's like some strain like deep inside, you know, like the way that they captured that was just so uncanny. So I think it speaks to this as well. And like even look at the smile's a little different too. And so yeah, I just thought that that was an interesting thing to have noted. Yeah, so see, this is what I mean. We do get some shots of the outside, but don't they look just so dreary? Like they don't look like that photo. Like I guess you could say that these may be lush if we got close to them, if it wasn't so misty, but like there's nowhere that really looks like that picture, right? Like this is all mountainous. This isn't a sprawling, like the hills are alive with the sound of music area. You know what I mean? Like this is all very like in that gothic style. And now that I'm actually like looking at this, I sort of wonder, like it seems like that this is the perimeter, right? Like I'm getting some weird Attack on Titan inside of the wall vibes, but like just from looking at this, I think that I'm getting to that thing that I said about there being different like sectors or like like different like houses, like how I said earlier, like the house in the end credit song, and then we see like those two houses as some of the objects that Kate like is referencing like during the scene where she's saying how everything's dirty. I'm sort of wondering if the walls and then this sort of middle thing like act as some sort of like division. And so in this section, this is like the 5 kids, this is the like preteens, like sort of the Sarah and Mia, and then maybe like in here is like the grandfather, and then like, you know, on this side is the adults. You guys understand what I mean? Like it seems like it's almost divided into 4 for the 4 stages of life, and then you could have like the head of the family be almost like at the top. And so yeah, I think that the layout of the area is very interesting, just because like, see how this roof is going this way and so is this one? It almost creates like some sort of separation. And so I wonder if that's the vibe that we're going for. Is this like walled in, like enclosed, very Attack on Titan, very Neverland type of vibe going on over here. I don't have too much to say about this scene. I just thought that it was really cute how she was just like looking in, she's standing there, she's sort of like not nervous, but she's like impatient, like she's just sort of like waiting, she's crossing her legs, she's almost like not necessarily bouncing, but that's sort of like I'm waiting outside the principal's office or like the teacher's office, and I wish like class just started so we could get this over with, like that sort of vibe. And I really like this scene just as like a little scene to indicate Emily Coe's like feelings lately. And so I thought that that was just sort of cute, like she checked in and she's like, she's still asleep, and so she was just patiently waiting outside. And so I thought that that was just cute. I thought that this scene was funny just because it was almost like a spot the object that's important type of thing. But you still see like the 2 houses in this frame as well. And so it's interesting how like the objects are also like, obviously they're naturally around the room, but you guys know what I mean, like just like those objects that I thought were important at the beginning are also like around. And so this doll actually becomes like very important later, but I sort of wonder like what it is, because I know it's a plushie, but like why is it so important to her? And it just like there's something uncanny about it. Like I've seen like what do you call it, like there's these YouTube videos and it's like, this is the blackest fabric that has ever existed, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like it's the blackest black fabric and everything. And so I'm sort of looking at this doll, and I know obviously like it's supposed to be reminiscent of Kate, like it looks like Kate when she's like in her night dress, but at the same time I'm sort of wondering about like, it doesn't seem like it's a toy, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't look like, oh, it's just like a teddy bear with black fur, if that makes sense. Like it looks like more like she does in the sense where it's all soot. And so I wonder if it's like a soot creature of some kind, or like something like that, like, and it's just like dormant. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but just let's go back a little bit. Like just when you look at it, I guess we'll see it better in like that other scene where she has it really up close, but it's almost like, you know how people have those depictions of like a black hole and stuff? Like it's just like it's just the most black fabric, and it's almost like that magical element that Kate has in a sense. And so yeah, I don't know what to make of it quite yet, but we'll come back to that when we actually get to that scene. So the important part of this area was, I think that first, like Emily Coe is getting a lot better, like in terms of her like clumsiness, and so there's improvement in that area. But it's also it won't be long before you are summoned to clean outside this room, and this is where I started getting really excited, and that's exactly what happens in this episode today. Here's the thing though, like this window scene reminded me of the fact that we never got any explanation on why that doll was glaring at us last episode. Like that was sort of like left to be like hung in the air and everything, and so I'm still not gonna forget that, because I feel like that I'm starting to piece more things together. I genuinely think that what happened based on this episode was that doll of the girl with like the triangle shaped hair with the blue flowers in it, I genuinely think that the doll broke and had to get fixed, and so that's why it was irritated or something like that. Like that's sort of how I'm thinking of it, because we do see like Emily Coe fall out a window and everything, and so I'm thinking that basically what happened is that doll broke somehow and it was fixed and it's not too happy, basically. Like it's irritated for some reason. Like maybe, I don't know, like maybe it was trying to get away and it's been like punished or something like that, and so it glared at her. Like something along those lines. And I don't know, that's just what I was thinking. And so it seems like though a lot of the dolls are not treated very well, and so maybe that's why the doll was glaring at Emilyko, because we do see like Mia doesn't seem to be treated very well either. And so maybe it's glares like almost like warning, or maybe even like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I remember when I got my first job, this was 2 years ago. I got my first job a year before like the pandemic started. And so I remember like just being so like bubbly and happy for like the first like month or the first couple weeks, and like my coworkers who had been there longer being like, no, it'll go away. Like you'll stop feeling that way. And so that's how I'm sort of wondering, is that maybe like they see Emilyko's like optimism and they're like, nah bitch, like snuff that out right now. Like this is not the place. Almost like an anger that she's so like blissfully naive. And we don't really see that though in the cleaning scene. We see almost the opposite of like propaganda pushing. But I do think that maybe like that could be, you know, where the difference is that doll, you know, the one that glared at her last episode, is not buying all the propaganda bullshit, right? And so it glared at her in like that sort of way, like, you're just one of those like preppy dolls that drank the Kool-Aid, aren't you? Right? Like, especially just based on how she was waving and how happy she was, it would be easy to misinterpret that or get that impression, right? Whereas all the other dolls, like, they seem to be like drinking this Kool-Aid, this propaganda Kool-Aid. And so yeah, that's just my thoughts about the scene from last episode, now contextualized like with the scenes from this episode, but we didn't get like an update on that. I thought that as we were going towards the window we would have, but we didn't. So I guess that's up for us to just like think about and remember like going forward. So I'm surprised that I didn't see anyone talk about this. Like, this is so creepy. Like, I guess it just happened very quickly, but this doesn't seem like it was Mia, because at first that's what I thought. Like, I thought that Mia had like a, you know, a thing covering her head and she just like took it off when she went to Emilyko for some reason. But then I realized that these are actually like two different scenes, and these are like the people that bring the bread. And so it does seem like we're getting into like an indication that there's a hierarchy of dolls and like servants in the castle, and that the living dolls may be like one of the highest, whereas like these dolls are like, you know, like more towards the lowest, and they look kind of scary, you know what I mean? Like, it looks like those ghost movies where the ghost has no face and everything, right? And so you just have this like, you know, the head's covered as if it can't even have, like, the doll can't even have an identity, or the doll is not even deserving of having a face, and so the head is covered, right? And so that's sort of what I'm thinking. And by the gloves, it does seem like that this is the doll that brings the bread, right? And so I feel like that's what's happening. Like, I feel like that, like, there's gonna be, like, in the OP, I said this as well, because we saw, maybe it wasn't the OP, maybe it was just the first episode, you see all those people, and they're, like, shoveling or something, and I was like, oh, like, are those, like lesser dolls somehow, or are those actual humans? Now I'm thinking that those are actually, like, lesser dolls, and I don't like that. I don't like how this is looking, guys. That's all I'm trying to say. Yeah, so see, because Mia came in right after, I was under the impression that it was Mia, but I don't think it was. I think that it was the bread doll, like the doll that brings the loaves in the morning, and so that is not good. And so she also says that she's from the room above, and so what I'm sort of thinking is that in the OP, or I guess, I keep getting them confused, whatever, it's fine. In the end song, what's interesting is that we only see 5 squares, and they're almost like diagonally, and so that means, like, if you had like a box, right, I don't know if you guys can see this, but like, if you had a box, right, there's like the odd number of squares and then the even number, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Wait, that wasn't right. No, I think that's okay. Anyway, whatever. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait, it's because I counted Kate's twice. 4, 5. Okay, so if you guys could just follow my mouse, I'm gonna do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So you have sort of like, almost like a bingo card, right? You have 3 this way, and then you have 3 this way. That actually means that there are extra squares. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would have someone below Kate, someone to the right of Kate, someone to the left of Kate, and someone above Kate. And so it seems like that even though the 5 may be the kids that have gotten the new dolls, if that makes sense, that have gotten the dolls for the first time, it seems like that there could be, like Mia and then the other doll that we see later in the episode, maybe they are on the bottom up left and right of Kate, because Kate is in the middle, which means that everyone else like surrounding her room is a blank square. And at first I thought like, oh, well, those are the only 5 in this house, but now I'm sort of thinking that like in this section there may be more, and it may be these like slightly older ones, the ones that have had their dolls a little longer, but they're all still like, I think that they're all still almost debuting, because Sarah mentions the debut and she says like the doll hasn't had it yet, but it seems like, I don't know, I'll have to see whether Sarah is implying that the debut has happened, but she's also wearing different clothes when she's with Sarah, and so I feel like that is post-debut, and so I feel like that you have sort of this section of the ones that have like not debuted and the ones that have recently debuted but are not old enough to basically go with the older teenagers or the adults yet, and so that's an interesting thing to note as well, like her saying that they're in the room above and then all of those spots being blank in the end card song. It's kind of interesting. See, and then we see this girl running. Now, this is the one that was doing like the maximum twinning, I guess I'll call it, in the end song. Like they were both in shadow. And so I thought that that was sort of interesting because I've been thinking about that more, and I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but in this episode, you have Mia, who is forced to mimic Sarah. And so I feel like it would be interesting if it's almost the reverse, where the shadow for this character actually mimics the doll. So it's actually the reverse. And so the shadow for like this doll does not have the same sense of identity that Sarah does. And so instead, that doll is actually like almost in charge of their persona, where the shadow copies the doll instead of the doll copying the shadow. But those are just some initial thoughts, just again, based on what happened in this episode. I'm trying to like rethink to all of the clues that may have been in the songs. But yeah, and so we see her running by, and we see her a couple more times too, and so it's like, hello, main character. I mean, they did a pretty good job of like designing, like, because we see like tons and tons and tons of living dolls later, so they did a good job of designing them so it wasn't like super like pick out the main character with the bright blue hair, so it wasn't exactly like that, but still, like, that's just sort of how I was thinking of it, like, oh yes, like, we know you are in the OP. And so I feel like that this conversation is, again, like, very telling. Have you ever been outside your room? And so she hasn't, right? Like, she hasn't. Really? You're in for quite a surprise. It's truly amazing. And so this could mean like 2 things. Either like she's drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And she's just like, you know, doing the propagandas, or she loves being outside the room because Sarah is actually like abusing her in a sense. Like, any excuse to get away from Sarah, she looks for. Being outside of the room and being able to be your own person is amazing, right? Like, that's the sort of vibe I got from this conversation. And then she says, do you get along with your shadow master? And I feel like that this may have been the first indication that not everything was good over here, especially because like Kate has never requested to be referred to that way. And so I feel like that was pretty telling as well, like the relationship, like Kate and Emily Coe, it seems like Kate is like the big sister that helps like Emily Coe like through the world, you know, teaching her how to read and teaching her like how to be pretty and all that stuff, like that big sister, little sister relationship. Shadow Master has a very different indication, right? And so I feel like that this was the first red flag of this episode, right? That's what we call shadows when we don't know their names, right? And so she doesn't know that Emily Coe is Kate's shadow specifically, and so that's the term that she uses. But again, it's a very like, that is indicative of like a different like relationship, that maybe Kate and Emily Coe's relationship is not the norm, that like, oh yeah, of course, like all the shadows that names we don't know, we call them Shadow Master, right? Where I feel like Emily Coe would not have that like inherent, I guess, instinct to think of them that way, right? And so yeah, so she's just saying like, hey, I don't know like Kate's name, and so that's what we defer to, right? But again, that sort of shows the difference of relationship between, I think, probably most of the other shadows and their dolls. So this stuck out to me just because, oh, you're the silent type, so you're like Lou. And so what I was thinking about was the fact that I think that Lou's the doll where there's some weird sexual stuff going on, and so I'm sort of worried about her if she's the silent type, right? Obviously, like, Mia is misjudging Emily Co, because I don't think that Emily Co is the silent type at all, right? She's just like sort of stunned into silence, but I feel like that she could talk your ear off, right? But like, I feel like that they threw that in to establish like Lou's characterization, and that makes me kind of worried about her, not gonna lie. Then we get this scene, which is just like so amazing because it just like captivates the emotion as an audience member, and then as Emily Co that you feel, because you see like the sunlight, and then you see all these dolls, right? And this is what I mean by I think that they did a good job not making it so like, oh, like this character is clearly the main character, because all of these other dolls are designed pretty well, right? Like, I feel like the reason why I can tell is because of who I remember seeing in the OP, but like, you know, like this girl over here, even though we can't see her face, like she could be, you know, like her design isn't so far off. It's like they made the main characters distinct, but they didn't make them clash. Like the main characters still make sense to be around all the other living dolls, where like any living doll could possibly be. Like, I feel like that every living doll is the main character of their own story, sort of thing. Like, they didn't make them clash, they made them like all like unified in that way. Like, it's a very like cohesive like character design, but they gave them small distinctions so you could tell like up close, if that makes sense, right? Like this girl with the braid, for example, like I feel like that all the other girls in this room have very like normal hairstyles. But yeah, I just really like that they didn't make it like I'm clearly the main character, like they didn't do it that way, but instead they sort of did it in a way where all of the characters like fit in so well like with each other, and I think that that's just really, really great. And so yeah, this was just such a moment, like just the gravity of this moment, seeing all of the other dolls, seeing like the beams and the light and the specks of light, like it almost looks like pixie dust, except it's just regular dust, right? And so I think that the gravity of this scene was really great. Now, something interesting to note here is they kind of threw us a little like sign, I guess you could say, like not a sign, but like a little bit of foreshadowing towards the soot suit. And so this is what somebody looks like when they are suited up in the soot suit. And so what's interesting is that the head thing that they're wearing is very similar to what Kate wears. So I guess she just wears that all the time, like to catch the soot, so her hair, like, I guess doesn't like bleed into like the pillows and stuff as much, but this is part of their like soot cleaning outfit. And so I thought that was interesting to note, and also just because like this is when we see it worn on someone versus it being in the actual box. But they're like, yeah, it's fun to clean up there, it's so high, and she's just like looking like there's so many people, so hello, you're OP and you're in the OP. But see, this is what I'm saying, like you look at these guys and there's nothing stopping these guys from being main characters too. Like maybe they are, you know, like it's not necessarily like this guy definitely has a unique style because his hair is slicked back, right? But like at the same time, like this guy has a unique style because he has little like Leonardo DiCaprio hair, right? And so I really like that any character that you see, like it could be like a character that's focused on. They don't necessarily all look like faceless. The girls though, like, you know, with the ponytails and with the pigtails, that's a little bit more, okay, the hairstyle is more simple, so we probably won't be seeing too much of you. But yeah, I think that they do a really good job overall. The house is so big, our cleaning duties never end, even with this many dolls. There are a lot of dolls. And so she seems pretty happy about that again. So I think that's a mix of like propaganda, but also the fact that she would literally rather be out here cleaning than be with her, with Sarah. And so yeah, then we see like this girl again, right? And so that's the girl that we see earlier, and she is, I think she's bottom left in the OP. She's like the purple tinted room and everything. And so I like how Emily Co says hi to her, and then she just like, you know, she gets kind of embarrassed. But see, like even this girl has a little side part. She has a ponytail. detail. Like, nobody looks so, like, you're clearly a background character. And so I thought that this was cute that she's, like, so shy, and I really like that she has a little, like, bow on her finger. I thought that that was, like, really, really cute. And so it seems like that she is more the shy one, but that's why I think that it would be so interesting if she's the personality, like, her personality is the one that the shadow uptook and not the other way around. Like, it'll be interesting to see, like, what her shadow is actually like. So then we get introduced to Rosemary and Lou. I'm assuming that Lou is the way you say it, and so we see, again, like, her and her shadow are in, like, the OP in the end song and everything, and so we've seen a little bit of her. I'm worried if she is the quiet one and why she's being quiet. I'm a little concerned. But then we have Rosemary, who is, like, deep in the, like, propaganda Kool-Aid. Like, she is, like, turning out the propaganda. But again, I sort of wonder, because she doesn't really look like she's one of the adults, if she could be, like, in the same sort of section, like with Mia being like, oh yeah, like, I'm just above, like, your room, like, I'm just above you, right? Like, I wonder if Rosemary could be one of the ones below, to the right, or to the left of Kate. And so yeah, like, that's something interesting to think about. But yeah, I really like her hairstyle, but, like, her personality concerns me a little bit. But yeah, I really thought that this was cute, and I like how she bows to her, and so I thought that that was interesting as well, because, like, they probably don't really experience that very much, and so again, it's sort of showing, like, Emily Coe is not thinking of people in terms of shadows or dolls, right? Like, she's thinking of people like everyone's, like, a person, you know, and, like, this is my senpai, so I must give her respect, right? And so I think it's interesting to see all those little hierarchies. The four of us will work together as a team. As the oldest, I was appointed our leader, right? So she's the oldest, so she could also be on her way out soon to be with, like, the adults, or, like, the teenagers, I guess I should say. But there's no reason to stand on ceremony, and so I think that that was more of an indication of the bowing thing. Like, yeah, I'm the oldest, but you don't need to do that, right? Like, you don't need to do that. And so I wonder if, like, you don't need to do that because I'm friendly, but also you don't need to do that because I'm just a doll and I have no real power here. That's a freaky thing to think about, right? But I thought that this was a really nice scene. She seems really sweet, even though I feel like there's something underlyingly, like, icky about, like, what goes on, like, in the next little area. So this was kind of funny. She says, don't worry, they're all very nice dolls, well, most of them are, right? And so I wonder if that's, again, foreshadowing for what happens in this episode, but I don't think that Mia was being mean. Like, she had no choice but to, like, do what she was doing in that later scene, because obviously her shadow was doing it, right? And so I wonder, though, if there's a doll that's, like, a total asshole, but then has to be nice because their shadow is, like, timid and, like, demure, if that makes sense. And I did get that vibe from one of the boys, I think. Like, one of the boys, his shadow looked a bit more, like, reserved than he did, and so I wonder how all that works. That's gonna be an interesting thing to see. But yeah, I really like just, like, this, like, scene of introductions and all the thoughts that it's given me. This was a nice little comedic scene as well, because, like, Emily Coe, like, takes her words at, like, face value, like, really, forever? And then Lou's like, no, like, you dumbass, right? And she's just like, leave her alone. And so I thought that that was a nice little bit of comedy as well. But I do wonder, like, about, like, hey, like, don't break her, like, naive optimism, Lou, okay, relax. Like, that's how I sort of, the vibe that I sort of got. So see, this is where the propaganda stuff starts. You're a living doll. Don't threat over trivial matters. And isn't it interesting that trivial matters basically mean anything that, like, validates your humanity or your personhood, right? Like, you have, like, hey, like, don't worry if you get along with people because you're not a person anyway. Don't worry about, like, you know, this or that, because, like, it doesn't matter. Like, she's worried about, like, oh, will I make friends? Will I get along with everyone? You can't have friends if you're not considered a person, Emily Coe, right? Like, that's the attitude, right? As long as we're diligent in our cleaning duties and serve the Shadows family well, we'll be happy, won't we? Right? And so that's basically saying, hey, if you do the things that we built you for, instead of exploring your own personhood, you'll be happy, right? Like, it's a very, like, there's something very underlyingly, like, malicious in all of these, like, dialogue. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Like, I don't think that she's saying that as in, like, I don't think that Mia is saying that in terms of like that she's actually like shady underneath, but I'm saying that in terms of like the text of the anime and the themes that it's probably going to go into. I feel like all these like, don't fret, relax, don't worry about it. Like I feel like that is all gonna be like later exposed as like rhetoric, right? To basically like keep them complicit in this system, right? Yeah, so again, this is basically connecting the mask to the masked people that we saw earlier in the scene. You won't need your soot suit today. We're not doing a deep cleaning. And so I'm like, like how does one have a deep cleaning? Like, why would one have a deep cleaning, I guess is the best way to say it. You know what I mean? Like, what occurs that a deep cleaning is necessary? And so it reminds me of that scene where the girl at the very beginning, again, the girl whose doll glared at us last episode, she was doing this thing and she was emitting like soot after soot after soot, like lines and lines of soot. Like, I wonder if a deep cleaning is necessary, like not just because a doll like gets like super angry or like something like that, but like in, you know, a different sort of process like what that girl was doing, you know. And maybe it was because her doll like got hurt. Like maybe it wasn't to fix her doll, because I had that theory like, oh, the doll like got hurt and needed to get fixed, and so that's why she was emitting the soot. But maybe her doll like got hurt or something, or she was told like, hey, this is your doll's last chance or we'll destroy you, and like that's why she was emitting so much soot, because she was just so upset. So I wonder like what constitutes as a deep cleaning and why do we need one? I don't know, and I hope that we don't find out, because I feel like it would not be good. Just a quick note, but I thought that it was interesting that they again show like, oh, Emily Ko is like, these are mine, these are my very own, right? And so it's almost like a little like throw them a bone, like here's something that's yours, here's something that you can attach and like keep yourself to, if that makes sense, right? Because we see later in this episode we have the idea of a doll, right? Like the doll that you cherish and you treasure and everything. And so like that again, I feel like builds like distinction and almost builds like a type of personification. And so I wonder if like characters like, you know, like Rosemary and like Mia, like in the adults, wouldn't necessarily approve of something like that, because that is sort of, how do you call it, like enacting or like putting forth, like basically like it's an act of like, you know, being a person, having sentimental like things, like having things of sentimental value, like it's an action like in of itself, like her having a doll that she treasures and cherishes. And so it's almost like they're throwing her a bone here, like, hey, these are yours, they're your very own, but it's cleaning supplies, you're supposed to treasure the cleaning supplies. Like that's sort of how I'm seeing it. And yes, like she's happy by it, obviously, but I think that it's almost in contrast to the doll later that we see, obviously like the little penguin or like chicken thing or whatever it's supposed to be, the one that Emily Ko makes, because that is something that's like more of a like a personal identity thing. Like I think all of us have like a stuffed animal or a toy or a blanket or something from our childhood that we really like connect to in a way. And so I feel like that they would really like strip a doll of that, like if they knew that a doll was like having like values and thoughts like that, I guess, like getting sentimentally attached to anything else but the cleaning supplies. And so yeah, then we got this song, though today we clean, tomorrow the soot will collect once more, so let it collect, for we shall wipe it away. And so again, wipe it away. And so it's basically like, hey, day after day, like, you know, it doesn't matter, let the soot collect, because we'll be here to clean it. And it's like a very like cheerful song, and I really liked this. I like this sort of almost like Disney style musical number where it seems like the voice actors are actually singing, like it's not a song being injected into the anime, but it seems like it's an actual, like the voice actors are singing. Let's make ourselves useful. And again, don't fret over trivial matters, like that's in the song. And I'm like, hello, propaganda. Hello, brainwashing. You guys are gonna be sick of that word by the time I finish. But yeah, it really is, right? For the sake of the Shadow family. Yeah, and so that's interesting. Don't fret over trivial matters for the sake of the Shadows family. And so that's almost like, hey, don't fret over trivial matters, like, for their sake. You would have to sort of think, like, don't think of yourself as a person for their sake, or else they won't be able to use you anymore. Moving swiftly onward. I don't know if this was intentional or not. It may just have been, like, how I was taking the screenshots, but I think it's kind of cool how we see, like, Emily Ko, and then, like, another, like, Emily Ko, and, like, all my screenshots are sort of like that. And so it's almost making me think of, again, that dual identity that they're gonna have, or at least that Mia has, right, because of Sarah, even though, like, she's still, like, smiling and stuff, so it's not like there's, like, an evil identity underneath. But I just thought that it was cool, the fact that they have, like, two shapes, and that could have just been how I took the screenshots, but it seems like the motion blur sort of carries over for the whole scene. And so even though I'm sure it was just, like, a functional thing, at the same time, I think it's kind of, like, cool in a way, right? Just because it does show that, like, oh, like, there's two of them, right? Like, there's not three of them, there's two of them. It's almost like their own little shadow, right? In a way. And so, yeah, I just thought that that was, like, an interesting thing to note, is that the whole scene is like this, not just, like, it's not just me having bad screenshots. Oh, that one's making me dizzy, let's move on. So we get this really cute scene of Emily Co basically taking her socks off and being like, yeah, like, my feet were laying down on the job, because, like, they're the only part of her that's not dirty, I guess, like, from the soot. So I thought that that was a cute scene. It made Kate laugh. So I finally understand what happened here, and that is, I think that on the first day when Emily Co was going up the elevator, I think that she accidentally activated the soot remover, right? Because, like, she actually uses it here, and they say, like, how was the soot remover, right? It was pretty powerful. So that's how she cleans herself, like, after her duties of cleaning, like, in other parts of the castle, right? And so I thought that that was sort of, like, an interesting thing. Was that last episode, I was like, what happened, right? But in this episode, we see, like, oh, okay, so she must have pressed the soot remover by mistake last episode, instead of the elevator, and now, like, that thing has, like, an actual function, and that's why, like, the wind is so strong and everything. And so Kate seems genuinely happy here, like, because Emily Co is saying, oh, like, I had such a great day, like, a living doll called Mia taught me a bunch of new things, and she's like, that's wonderful, and I feel like she's genuinely happy. Like, this to me is, like, a very happy face. And so it doesn't seem like that she feels any sort of, like, danger by, like, the other living dolls or anything. Like, she doesn't have, like, a tense reaction to it, like she knows that they are, like, catty or bitchy, right? Like we see later in this episode. But yeah, and so here's where everything goes wrong, and again, it's sort of a spot the object type thing. And I guess that this shows that Kate has more than one book, because I was like, how is she entertaining herself, right? But it seems like she has a couple books in here to keep her entertained. And I guess, like, I guess we could get to this later, but I was thinking of, like, that, like, debut question and everything, like, oh, like, why does Kate stay in her room? This is how my mind works, guys. I saw the books and I remembered, oh yeah, Kate has to stay inside all the time. Why does Kate have to stay inside? And so now I'm thinking, like, if the debut thing is going to be explained, I feel like the explanation will be that the shadow is supposed to get accustomed to their doll, and then when they're finally, like, in sync, they will be debuted to the world, and then after that you can, like, run around outside. That's basically what I was trying to say. My mind was everywhere. But yeah, this is where everything goes wrong with the plant. And so I wonder again, like, where did this rose come from? Like, where did this fresh rose come from? Because I don't think that Emily Co brought it back. So yeah, that's again, like, it seems like that stuff maybe dropped off to Kate's room, maybe to entertain her or, like, make her happy in this time of solitude. And again, do you guys understand what I'm saying about the toy? Like, the toy just looks, again, like that sort of video, like, this is the blackest black fabric in the known universe, right? It sort of looks like that. And so I wonder if this is actually not, like, a doll, but it's, like, also, like, you know, has a component of, like, the soot in the same stuff that makes up Kate. But yeah, this is where she saves the book, but then she wets the plushie. And so again, I wonder, like, where did the plushie even come from, right? Like, somebody must be bringing her stuff, or, like, maybe her room already had these things, but they just didn't show it last episode. So I'm sort of curious about all that. So right here, we can see how scary the shadows can really be, like, when they want to be. Like, her hair almost goes like tentacles, right? And then you see, like, how much soot she's emitting, because she's really mad. Do whatever you will with whatever else you see here. And then we see her, like, walking forward, and then slam, we get the slam of the soot down on the table. But Kate treasures that stuffed toy. You don't treasure anything so you wouldn't understand. And so again, like, I feel like that whole, like, treasuring thing goes back to what I said earlier about like the cleaning supplies, but then also her making her own toy. Like to treasure things, you kind of have to be a person, and that's the opposite of what most shadows, I think, or probably all shadows except for Kate, want their dolls to be. Like that's the complete opposite, right? And so yeah, Mistress Kate, I treasure you, and I thought that was so sweet, but she was like, I'm not having any of it. Kate is gonna take a bath, and so I feel like that is just like a relaxation thing to stop emitting the soot, but also just to like, you know, gather the soot in one place where it easily goes down, because I think that one thing that Kate really hates is the idea that she's making a mess. And so we get a very spiky collection of soot, and so she says, when soot will not come off, the shadows has in, and so we don't exactly like get what this means. She basically is going to take the paper up to Kate and have her read it, and I think that like basically what this whole like scene is trying to tell us, especially because like it just comes down later from the ceiling, is that it's like, hey, when the soot won't come off, it's because the shadow is so angry and it hasn't let go of its anger yet. Like it's holding a grudge, basically. It's soot that holds a grudge, you know what I mean? And so like you basically have to appease the shadow in order for it to come off, and I feel like that could be used in a very manipulative way later on, especially like, well, you have to make me happy or you can't do your job and clean the soot. Like I feel like that it could be something like that, especially because like in the post-credit scene from this episode, we see like Mia's entire room is covered in soot, and it's not like that soot that doesn't come off, but like the soot is almost used as a punishment, and so I feel like that some sort of manipulation with that soot that won't come down unless you appease the shadow could be very dangerous in the future. And so then we get the fixing scene after Emily crying a little bit, and I felt so bad. But we do see like the doll, I guess, in more close upness. I didn't know what I was trying to say there. You guys know what I mean. We see it close up, and this is what I mean by the idea that it's not just a doll like with black fabric. Like it just looks so like different compared to the cotton that's coming out of it, and so I feel like that this is like a doll with some sort of properties like similar to Kate in some way, just based off of like, I don't know, like maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm looking too much into it. Only here does it really look like a piece of fabric. Like in these scenes, it looks like something else. I don't know. It's sort of uncanny and like hard to explain, but I think the uncanniness either way, like whether it is just a doll or not, like I think that the uncanniness is definitely the point with the toy. And so we really see Kate soften in this scene. Kate is sorry, Emily Co. You were never told not to touch it. That is Kate's fault. Forgive the outburst. And so she actually feels bad for yelling at her, where I feel like that sort of feeling is probably not going to be common amongst some of the other shadows that we see later in the series. Don't be silly. I made my own stuffed toy while yours was drying, and I thought it was so cute because it's also wearing the maid's outfit, I guess, and so I thought that was like a cute little thing too. Like it looks like it is, or like if we're talking about alternative outfits, like Kate's doll is wearing the night dress, I think that this doll may be wearing the soot outfit. I'll have to go back and look at it, but I think the collar is similar to the soot cleaning outfit that she has to wear, so I thought that was like sort of cute. But then it would be like, okay, well, why did she make herself a duck? I don't know, but I thought that was like, I don't know, it sort of fits with her, doesn't it? Like her personality. And so she named him Rolly, and I'm assuming like she named him Rolly like a bread roll, because Kate's like, you really do love bread, don't you? Right? But that's all she knows. All she knows is bread, right? She doesn't know strawberries, right? I don't think so anyway. Yeah, I would really like to know how much common knowledge like I guess Emily Co has, because she has enough knowledge to make a little chicken if she knows that's what a chicken is, but it doesn't seem like she has a lot of like knowledge of other things. And so I wonder if this is like, I don't know, implicit in some way, like subconscious knowledge, like stuff like a chicken, but at the same time, I feel like that this could be more indication of like a mind wipe situation, you know, like that, like not necessarily like she's been Kate's doll before, but more so that in that very first scene where they're wearing like the peasant clothes, like she was brainwashed from her regular life, whatever life that she had before this basically, and the chicken is sort of an indication of the remnant of that, because you're like, okay, well if Emily Co is basically like, she seems to know certain things, right, but then she doesn't know that she has to eat, she doesn't know that she feels pain, she doesn't know that she gets hurt, and so there's just some things that don't make sense for her to know if the writers are thinking thinking of her like a newborn baby that has never seen a chicken before. And it could be just one of those like oversights, right? Like I remember I watched this one show and there was supposed to be like, it's supposed to be a world that is like gender equal. Like that wasn't the point of the show. Like that wasn't the plot, but that was just like how the world was supposed to be. And then like one of the characters used the phrase like damsel in distress or something. And it's like, okay, but you wouldn't have that phrase in like a gender equal society, right? And so it's one of those things that like sometimes writers can take in their own like thoughts and sort of like forget about like what context the character should have. But I think this may actually just be like a hint. Like I think that it may be a hint, not a mistake. Then we get the whole like, what about the soot that won't come off and it just crashes, right? So it seems like that Kate has some sort of direct control over it, because now that her mood has been like satisfied, like now that she's feeling better, it just all came off. And so that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to keep in mind for the future. And so here's where you could see everything going wrong from a mile away, right? Like you have her like, you know, cleaning the window and it's slowly falling out of her pocket. But I loved the chaos in this scene, right? Because it starts very tense because you know that she's gonna fall, you know what's gonna happen, but then the aftermath is like so almost like sporadic. I don't know how to explain it. Like Kate jumps up, like this is the fastest that I think we've ever seen Kate move, and she goes towards the door. And now that I'm looking at it, I think that the doorknob that was in the soot scene, like where she's talking about how everything gets dirty, I think that it was actually indicating to this door, because you saw this chair in the same shot as well as the light in the same shot. And so yeah, I think that it was supposed to be foreshadowing to the fact that she would leave. And then you see this, and so this seems like there's some sort of like magical amulet thingy. Like it seems like you're supposed to like be like knock knock knock, like little magic mirror or something. Like it seems like you're supposed to like call and be like, hello, can I leave, or ask for permission or something. Like it's almost like something is watching on the other side. And then she's like, because you see that there's a lot of hesitation in this area. Why can't I move? Because I'm zoomed in, that's why. Oh yeah, so you see that there's a lot of hesitation here, right? She goes to the door and she's like, she looks at her hand and she's like, I don't know about this. And then she looks around and she's like, I can't, right? I think that it's less looks around and more like she shakes her head, right? So she's sort of thinking, she's like, should I do this? Should I not do this? No, it doesn't matter. I need to go after Emily Coe. That's how I personally read the scene. So she does the doorknob and then she fucks off, right? And so I wonder also if the color is attached to the color associated with the character. And so obviously you have like Kate's whole thing is red. Another character's is like yellow, green, blue, and purple. And so I wonder if the things on the doors are also like that color, if that makes sense. Like they all have their own orbs, but I'm sure that someone's supposed to be watching her, and this is gonna come up later. Now, this was a really random thing. I'm sure that this is just here for decoration, but I did see this statue and I thought that it was kind of like odd, I guess. Like, I don't know, it's just like high art in the castle, but I thought that I should point it out just because it kind of looks like ancient Greek type thing, and you're like, like why would somebody, like why would this family have something like that? Of course, like lots of rich people have like high art stuff, but I just sort of wonder like what this, I don't know, maybe it means something, maybe it's just there for decoration, but even as a decoration, it's kind of interesting that they decided to put it there at all. Like it seems like a weird detail in a hallway that is otherwise not very full. Like we see one painting and then we see one statue and then there's nothing else, right? Like except for over here there's some paintings and stuff. And so yeah, it just seems kind of weird, right? Because you could say that it's just they're trying to build up the atmosphere, but there's no other like statues like that or anything. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it seems like there was somebody else around though, because I don't know if it was supposed to be her, but like there's some shots where I can't tell if there's another shadow running around in the hallway and she's trying to like avoid them, like she's trying to avoid being seen. I think that it is like she fell in the bush so she's okay type thing, right? Because like obviously like it would sort of put a wrench in our human theory if she was able to survive like that fall just from being in a bush. Like that would point to something more supernatural, but at the same time like I feel like that's just anime logic. Okay, she fell in a bush, she's okay, right? Like I don't know. And so like kids are pretty like how do you say it? Resilient, right? Like I've always heard that kids handle injuries a lot better than like adults do. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard. And it's so like cool to see them actually like outside. It's a, yes, I didn't break anything. So she has a concept of like breaking, right? And so I wonder if that's just though because of the dolls that she's seen like broken, or whether she knows that she has bones. Like, you know what I mean? Broken bones, right? And so yeah, I really like this scene though. Like, thanks for coming all the way down here to check on me. And so she's like, yeah, of course, let's go, right? Let's get out of here. This is not good. And this is where obviously things start to go badly. So we see Mia and then we see Sarah. And what's interesting here that somebody should note, somebody being me, I don't know why I said that, I'm the only one noting something here for us to note, is that Mia is not wearing her maid's dress. She's actually wearing like a different dress. And so this is what made me think that like there's some sort of hierarchy, right? Where it's like, okay, you wear the maid clothes when it's like maid time, but like whereas Emily Co wears her maid outfit all the time, when she is being, I guess, Sarah's face, she gets to wear something a little more fancy, but still like differentiating enough so you understand that she's like not like the actual royalty, I guess you could say, the royalty here. And so you have this outfit, which actually looks again pretty similar to the fabric that's on Rolly, funnily enough, that's on the doll, the penguin, the chicken, whatever we're calling him, right? But I just thought that this contrast was interesting, just because it seems like that they are trying to show like the differentiation, like that she doesn't always have maid duties, or maybe she's been upgraded from maid duties today. Maybe next episode she won't do maid duties anymore. Like maybe she's been promoted, but I doubt it just because of the end scene. But yeah, I think that when she's out with Sarah, she's able to wear something a little more nicer because she's not acting as the maid, she's acting as her face. But at the same time, they can't be twinning because like that's not allowed, right? My, who do we have here? This is where everything goes badly. You must not have had your debut yet. And so I think that this, I know that I was sort of back and forth on it earlier, but I think that this indicates that they have already had their debut because they have already seen like some of the other dolls. Like, oh, you must have not had your debut yet because, you know, I haven't seen you. Also, there's the fact that they're walking around outside, which we don't know if the other ones that have not debuted yet are allowed to do. And so I think that I take it back on like flip-flopping whether or not they've debuted. I think that they are probably in like the even number set, if we want to call them that, you know, the above, below, left, and right instead of the diagonals that have like debuted, maybe alongside like Rosemary and those sorts of characters, like those older ones, right? And so I just, oh, this scene is so good. There's something just so uncanny about this scene, and it's just so uncomfortable because you kind of get the vibe that Emily Co is doing something like wrong, but then you don't really get it until you like rewatch it. You know what I mean? It's almost like secondhand embarrassment. I'm just like, no, do not do that, right? Oh dear. And so yeah, and so this is where we sort of get the real like uncanny, like, oh my god, like this scene is just so good because you can see that like she's mimicking her expressions, right? Like that sort of like, oh, well, what do we have here, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing, you know, that sort of mean girl thing, but at the same time there's tenseness in her facial expression. She looks almost regretful that she's having to do it. Like there's something about this eyebrow, right, that just seems like to speak regret and like almost tenseness, you know? Like she doesn't seem to be genuinely, like it's not like a mean face, even though I think that Sarah is very, very mean here. Something else that I thought was interesting was sort of the fact that like she obviously has like what do you call it? Like she has like almost fishnets over her legs, which makes sense, but also over her hands too. And I think that is to make her more similar, like to the shadow in some way, basically like to cover up. I don't know how else to explain it, but like you see, if we go back a little bit, that she has oopsies, that she has bare legs and then she has bare arms, and so it's almost like in order to mimic her better, they have her in like tights, you know what I mean? And see, even this face to me is like, hey, you know, like, I'm sorry, Emily Co, but get it together. Like, I don't know, it's this sort of like, almost like this pleading, like uncomfortable face, like, please sis, please, like she's begging her, you know what I mean? Like, turn back while you still can type of face. Like, it's just like a, like Emily Co, like, get with the program type face. Like, she's almost like begging her. She's like, I wish you understood type face, because I think she is just being feeling neutral because Sarah isn't talking. Like, this is supposed to be neutral, like she's not supposed to speak, but there's also just this tense layer under her facial expression, almost telling her, like, pleading deep inside, like, please don't do this, sis. Like, get out of here. You don't know what you're in for, right? And so, yeah, we see again the mimicking. Pleased to meet you, Sarah, at your service, right? And so, yeah, and then again, like, even with this, like, she's trying to be like that mean girl, but you see, like, reluctance, or at least I see reluctance. Maybe I'm projecting, but yeah, she's saying that Kate's turned pale, which I thought was funny because, like, obviously, like, Kate's not turning pale, but the idea is that this is Kate's face. Emily Co doesn't seem to be confident, right? Like, she's the one that's turning pale, but that is an indication, or it's supposed to be, of Kate's state. Whereas I feel like Kate is having, like, obviously we can't see her expression, but I imagine Kate to be more, like, cold and, like, resting bitch face. You know what I mean? Like, she wouldn't react to this situation. She wouldn't, like, you know, have a reaction or give her the satisfaction of one. But the reason why she's saying, oh dear Kate, you've turned pale, is because Emily Co is the one who's scared, right? Like, Mistress Kate looks quite impressive, but that's the problem. Kate may be, but you're not projecting that on the face, right? You know? Again, like, I feel like that even though, like, there's this, like, creepy, like, mimicry here, I feel like there's also, like, see that, like, brow and, like, the tenseness of the brow, like, that's a very, like, you know, tense eyebrow sort of line and everything like that. And so I really like, though, this, because I feel like with this face, you can tell that Sarah is a bit more bitchy than I think Mia can be. And I think that's also why, like, in the end credit scene for this episode, you see her room covered in soot, because I don't think that Mia got across the expressions to the satisfaction of Sarah. I feel like that she was punished for this interaction, maybe for being nice to Emily Co. I don't know, but I feel like that that's the sort of vibe that I'm getting. You could learn a lot from Sarah's face, right? And so, you know, in a sense, like, that's almost praise. Like, hey, you could learn a lot from my face. This is how you're supposed to act. But I feel like she does punish her later. Yeah, Little Miss Failure was not good, right? And so I wonder, like, if the dolls are just supposed to catch on quickly, or if Kate was supposed to tell her and Kate did not, right? Like, Kate didn't, you know, tell her to the exact same extent, or maybe Kate didn't even know, but it's like a sink or swim thing. Because I remember, like, somebody, I don't remember if I read this on Reddit or maybe I read this in my comment, but somebody was like, yeah, it's kind of cruel how, you know, they have all this stuff for the dolls to read, but then they don't know how to read, right? But, you know, somebody else responded to them that it's like sink or swim, right? Like, if the grandfather or whatever, like, you know, gets rid of both the doll and the face, it's sort of like a sink or swim test, right? And then you see, you know, obviously Mia blocks her path. Where do you think you're going, right? You intend to ignore Sarah's advice. Tell us, Little Miss Failure, what sort of face is Sarah making now, right? And so she's making an angry face. And so she doesn't have to mimic all the time, which is the interesting part, right? Is that sometimes she just is, like, you know, she's standing there. She's not doing, like, the arm cross that we see Sarah doing. And then how about Kate? Yeah, so that's the thing, is that, like, we don't know how Kate is truly feeling, even though I feel like I do. I feel like that she is, like, resting bitch face, that she's very, like, you know, cold in that way, that she's trying to seem unbothered, right? And probably I don't think that she's upset just because she's not emitting any soot, right? So I feel like that she's just like, oh, this bitch, you know, like, that's sort of her feeling. Oh dear Kate, what's the matter? Oh, that's right, you have no face, right? And so this is where bullying, hello, but yeah, I really like this scene, and just, like, oh, the contrast is just really nice, and I really just like there's so much tension in this scene. What sort of expression are you making now? Are you even looking at Sarah, right? So, you know, I think, again, that's not, like, obviously Kate is right in front of her face. It's not like, oh, like, Kate's not looking. It's the same as the paleness. It's that Emily Co isn't looking at Sarah because Emily Co is kind of scared, right? She's hiding behind her, you know? And so I feel like that's sort of the idea there. And so, yeah, very smug expression right there. Surely such a failed shadow and face will end up being discarded by our Lord Grandfather. And so again, so she doesn't always need to do the same body movements. It seems like that sometimes, like, just the facial expression is enough, and then she turns around and leaves. And so I wonder, though, if that could be part of why she got punished. It's like, well, you didn't mimic all my arm movements, Mia, right? I wonder if that's where all the soot came from, is basically what I'm saying, is that after this interaction, Sarah was not as happy with Mia as maybe she was like, you could learn something something from my face. You can learn something from Mia, like, in a sense. Oh, and so yeah, this was the other thing, is that Sarah also talks in third person, and so it seems like that this is something that all the shadows do, and that's sort of interesting, like, for their origin, and for, like, what they could actually be, in a sense. Like, I guess it may be the idea that they are supposed to, like, truly see themselves as their face, so they talk about themselves in third person. But I don't know, I also imagine, like, the soul of someone is trapped deep inside, and it's almost like the shadow is just like a mech suit. I don't know how to explain it. A mech suit for that soul trapped deep down. And so when Kate says, like, Kate wants to play with her doll last episode, that's like the Kate deep down inside, like, controlling, like, the shadow. I don't know, it's sort of a weird thing to think about. Goodbye, Kate. You were lucky it was Sarah you came across. This little faux pas shall remain between us, right? And so, no, she's not gonna tell, basically. And so that's important because she's not supposed to be out of her room, but I'm sure the adults probably noticed, given that, like, magic mirror thing that's supposed to be on her door. But I think that it could also just be not only hiding the fact that she's outside, but just the fact that her doll is not living up to the expectations. And if she told someone, she could probably get them in trouble, but she's not going to. And so, see, Kate even says, don't walk about with that face. Shadows must be more confident. And so that's the other thing, right? Like, that's the whole thing in that scene that they're basically, like, talking about, is the fact that despite Kate's demeanor in that scene, Sarah kept pointing at what was happening on Emily Coe's face, right? Emily Coe was pale. Emily Coe was hiding behind her and couldn't look at her, right? And that's supposed to be an indication of how Kate is, even though Kate had, like, a polar opposite. Like, she just, like, you know, Sarah was right in Kate's face and she didn't give a shit, right? And so, but now she's saying, you know, Emily Coe, maybe she has a point. I feel like that Kate is starting to see that maybe Sarah had a point. Then we have, it can't be helped, one cannot choose one's face, right? And so I thought that that was interesting just because it may be indicative of the fact that I was right about something that I had said earlier. And what I said was basically that Emily Coe was not made to mimic Kate, because we had this idea of, oh, well, maybe the living doll is like alchemy. You bring it to life in order to, like, basically, like, look like what Kate would look like if Kate was human, right? Like, that was the idea. But I don't think that that's actually the case, because she says one cannot choose one's face. And so, like, obviously, like, that would be true if you were, like, regularly born, I guess, right? Like, I can't choose my face, except I can choose a VTuber model, I guess. But you guys know what I mean. What it may be more indicative of is the fact that, like, I had this whole thing, like, oh, like, at the very beginning, they're dressed in sort of, like, weird peasant clothes. Are they just abducted children, like, from a nearby town or something? And so what I'm thinking is that Kate did not have an appearance, and instead, Kate mimicked her appearance after Emily Coe, and not the other way around, right? Because I had this idea, like, oh, well, obviously, they made Emily Coe after Kate, but I don't think that that was, like, actually the case. I think that my, like, very initial, like, theory was right. They made Kate, or rather, Kate formed herself after Emily Coe, and that's the one cannot choose one's face thingy, right? Because, like, theoretically you could if it was actually, like, a living doll made after you, but I don't think it was made after you. I think that shadow and doll are paired together, and the shadow has to take the form of the doll, but then the doll has to act like the shadow. I think that that's the sort of dynamic that they're supposed to have, and so I feel like that, like, that's, like, the whole thing. And so you could imagine, like, what if Kate had a different doll? Then she would have just taken, like, a different appearance, in a sense. So this line struck me as interesting as well. You tried to protect that which you treasure. That is progress. And so I wonder, like, progress towards what, though? I wonder if Kate could be making Emily Coe like this on purpose in order to, like, dismantle the system or something like that. I know, like, you guys are like, Cal, it's not always about dismantling the system, because Attack on Titan's been like that. Neverland was almost like that before Neverland was bad. And now this show's like that, but at the same time, like, that's progress. It seems like Kate is almost trying to do this on purpose, like, make Emily Coe be, like, an individual on purpose, right? Like, she gives her a completely different name compared to some of the other characters, like Sarah, Mia. Like, obviously they're not exactly the same, but initially she goes Kate, Kathy, right? Like, it seems like that they almost pick names in the same vein most of the time, or that sound very similar. And so now, like, in this case, you have Emily Coe and you have Kate. Like, that's like totally, like, that's totally far off, right? And so I feel like that, like, what if she's doing this on purpose? Like, what if she already had a doll before? You know, like, what if she already had a doll previously and it wasn't Emily Coe, but it was like another doll and it didn't work out, and the grandfather was like, listen, I'll give you another chance with another doll. And now, like, she's like, let's like dismantle the system or something, right? And so now she's actually doing it on purpose. Like, she wants Emily Coe to be like her own like individual and to be her own person. But the only problem I could see with that is, wouldn't it be more effective to actually like tell Emily Coe what you're planning if that's the case? Because then she can at least pretend to act like, you know, all the other dolls in public, and then you guys can like scheme and try to dismantle the system in private. That's just my initial thought, but maybe that's what next episode will be, is that Kate is actually like, hey, this is the lowdown, but when we're in private, you don't need to worry about that. Like breaking the rules and everything, like how she, you know, they dressed the same in the first episode. Like, I feel like that maybe it could be something along those lines. And what if that's why the toy was so precious to her, is because she had another doll before, and that other doll like made her the toy. Like, not Emily Coe, but like a completely other doll character is sort of what I'm thinking. And so then we get a very interesting scene here where Emily Coe can't sleep. She has a scrape on her knee, so again, it kind of shows like, hey, you're a living doll, but that's a kind of human thing though, right? And so she's saying, I'll make a don't fret notebook. And so I feel like that this is probably gonna be bad. I feel like this is probably gonna be bad later, just because like it could be like notebooks for the uprising. Like, it could be like perceived as that by another shadow or another doll. So yeah, I feel like that this may get her in trouble later, because people could see this as like a threat. But also like the fact that it's like, hey, dolls don't think of trivial matters, and now she's writing down all the trivial matters on her mind. Like, that could be evidence to the fact that she's not like letting go. And so yeah, like I feel like it could be both of those things. Like, oh, this doll is too smart, like it's planning an uprising, and then also that other thing of like, oh, well, it's also proof that she's like not like following the rules and like doing what we told her to. Like, more proof that she's defective. And I feel like those are two separate things. Like, one side, proof that she's defective; the other side, proof that she's trying to stir up shit. Neither one would be liked by like the nobles or like the adults, I'm assuming, right? First, I'm always worrying about how to serve Kate better. And I'm always wondering what the debut is, right? She's always wondering. So I wonder, like, I don't know, like, how could she always be wondering? Like, I wonder, I guess, the episodes between this, because I thought that we heard of the debut very first from Sarah just then, but like this is the same night. So she's like, I'm always wondering, and I'm like, how, sis? Nobody said anything until now. But anyway, what else? The Lord Grandfather, right? So that's something else that Sarah said. And so she almost is hesitant to write it down at first, Shadow's house, and then she's like, I mustn't speak of such things. And I'm like, why? Why mustn't you? Right? Like, why don't you think that you should speak of such things? And so that's what I'm sort of curious about, is it's almost like she has an inherent instinct that this may not be a good thing to look into, right? That the more she looks into it, the more in danger she could be, like that sort of gut feeling. So she says, I mustn't speak of such things, and yet I wonder. And like, this scene reminds me of something else from a different anime where they did a zoom in on the face like that, and it was supposed to be, I don't know exactly like what it was supposed to be, but it was supposed to be one of those like mind-blowing things, or like thinking thing, like one of those things, like scary thought things. I don't know, I've just seen this sort of shot before, but I don't know where. But yeah, she writes a lot of stuff down, and so I did see like speculation, and again, I don't remember if this was on Reddit or maybe it was in my Discord or not, but somebody was like, that seems like that's a lot more than just the things she listed. Like, what if this is like a previous journal? You know what I mean? Like, somebody played around with the idea that if, you know, the doll that we saw earlier, I think, was like angry. You know what I mean? Like, I keep talking about that doll, the doll that glared at Emily Coe. If that doll was like fixed or something, could it be possible that that doll was like reset in some way? And so if that doll was reset, could it like also like stand to reason that Emily Coe Co. has been reset before, right? And so somebody played around with the idea that this writing is not actually hers, but it's like previous writing, but I don't think that that's probably it. I think that honestly, she literally like just wrote a lot, like, you know what I mean? Like all of the sentences didn't necessarily like match up with how much writing like the animation team put on the page. Like usually I don't dismiss little details, but at the same time I'm like, but why would she have a journal from before? Like if they reset her, you would think that they would take away her journal, right? If she did something bad. Cause like this seems like I'm always worried about serving Kate. I'm always wondering what the debut is, the Lord Grandfather and then Shadow's house. Cause it zooms in on this and it's almost like this is saying, what is Shadow's house? Right? And then it says, what is Shadow's house? Right? So it seems like the lines on this page do match up with what she's saying. And so I understand like why someone would think, oh, well, this writing doesn't match up with what she's saying. So is it writing from another time? And somebody also played around with the idea that maybe those papers were written by her. Like, or I could think that maybe it plays in with our other theory that Emily Co. has not been reset, but rather the writing in this journal may be the writing, and then the pins on the wall may be from the previous doll that Kate had before Emily Co. If we think that that theory is correct, basically, that Kate had another doll, not Emily Co., but like a different face before, and that face like failed so badly that it was gotten rid of, and maybe that's why Kate is so cold and so like closed off sometimes, is because she doesn't want to get hurt again by losing another doll. And so maybe this isn't Emily Co.'s writing from like a previous memory or whatever people were sort of saying, but maybe it's actually like the doll before, right? And so that's what I'm sort of thinking. What if all the papers are from the doll before? The only thing that I would ask is, why would they let those papers stay in the room if the doll was so like defective? You know what I mean? But I don't know, it could just be an oversight. Maybe they just literally don't care, right? Like, cause it wasn't like, oh, this doll tried to start an uprising, so we had to get rid of it. It was just like, this doll was defective, right? You know, in regards to Kate, and they gave Kate another chance, but they didn't give the doll another chance. And so they just left the writings. Almost like, hey, we'll leave your old doll's writings up for the new doll, and then maybe the new doll will work out better for you, sis. Like, it could have been one of those things too. Actually, let's see if Sarah has notes when she goes in her room. So she's back in her maid's outfit again. All of the papers are supposed to guide the dolls. They're like written by the same like group and like put in the rooms and everything. And so maybe our theory about previous dolls isn't correct, but like, what if like multiple shadows have previous dolls and that's what they're there for? Or maybe even when the dolls like graduate, quote unquote, into adults or whatever, like their old papers stay in the room. And maybe it isn't a previous doll for Sarah per se, but it's like one of the adults that like graduated in a sense and like wasn't in these confines anymore, and so they just left their papers and left their notes for the next doll to move in to like help them out, give them a leg up. And maybe every room has something like that, because every room has once been inhabited by a previous living doll. And now we see that there's some like I don't know what they're called exactly, but like the stalactites and so, or stalagmites, and so we do see these in episode 1, I believe. And so it doesn't seem to be like necessarily that these are like the really emotional ones. Like, it doesn't seem like it's it has to be the really like spiky emotional ones that Kate had in this episode, though, because that concept was introduced, I would be inclined to think so. But like, even last episode there were some really spiky ones on the ceiling, I think. But I do wonder, right, like something clearly happened here, whether those are like anger spikes or whether she just messed it up on purpose. There is some things here that I'm like, did she like do this on purpose, like to mess up her room just because she's an asshole, to give her doll more to clean before she goes to bed? Like, even this though, see, so here's what's making me like, right? Okay, so like you could say like this is from her being angry, and that maybe, you know, she mistreated Mia in a sense, right? Like, you could say that. But Mia doesn't seem like she herself has any soot on her, and she also seems like surprised, because she's like, "Good night, Mr. Sarah," right? I don't know how happy she said it, but she's just going back to her room. I don't think she expected this, so I think that this is a surprise. So I don't think that she was actually hit in her room or anything. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily what happened, unless they like cleaned her off afterwards or something. I think that Sarah literally went into her room and like messed it up on purpose. Like this is a very like jumping on the bed with no shoes on type thing. The only reason I sort of had like, because I was toying between these two ideas, like one, like she was like hitting her, right? Like that's like something I thought, or like kicking her or something like very obviously abusive. And the reason why I thought that was because of the smears just like on the like some of the handprints and stuff. But now that I'm looking at it, I don't know, it's hard to tell. Like some of them look like claws, like claw marks, like if you were attacking someone or fighting with someone, right? But some of them just look like handprints, like I'm here to mess up your day type handprints. And it doesn't seem like Mia is the happy person that we saw earlier in this episode. She seems pretty angry. And so again, I don't know, she doesn't seem surprised. So you could say, oh, well, maybe like Sarah did this in front of her and she already knew. But I don't know, like she seems angry, like this is something that Sarah would do. But I don't know if Sarah did it like in her presence, or like Mia knew that Sarah was gonna do it. It seems like an angry, like, God damn it, bitch, really? Like it seems kind of like that. Like she didn't know that she was gonna walk into her room and see this, but like she's also not surprised. Shocked but not surprised, I guess. Yeah. And so what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Sarah like you know, hit her or something? Or do you think that she was literally just like, I'm gonna jump on your bed and mess it all up because I'm gonna make your life like harder for you and everything? I don't know. Like I do understand that some people interpreted like maybe she, you know, didn't serve Sarah to like Sarah's satisfaction or whatever. Oh, you didn't copy my hand movements, and so she did this to like make her job like 10 times harder. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one to think. Like whether she did it within Mia's presence and Mia was actually like in the room for this, or whether or not like she just came in here and fucked shit up. And that also makes me wonder, like she went into the doll's quarters, like is that even allowed? You know, and there's also like something, I guess this is just a cloth, but maybe a paper got torn off of the wall. And so yeah, I kind of see this less as like she came into the room with Mia and like, you know, started to kick her or something. Like I see it less as that and more that she like went into her room while like maybe she was gone helping the others clean, and she was just like, yeah, I'm gonna ruin your day. Like that seems like the kind of character Sarah is. What I would really like to see is like, I think that something that the show is presenting very interestingly is sort of the idea of like multiple faces that you wear, right? Like I think that something specific with Mia, not so much Emily Co, but something with Mia is that you have your Sarah face, like the face that you have to, the person you have to be around Sarah, right? And then being Sarah, like mimicking Sarah. But then you have work face, like the face that she had when she was with Emily Co and when she was cleaning all the other dolls. It was a bit more happy, I think. But then you have the face when you're all alone, and she's like, obviously, like who wouldn't be irritated? Even a positive person would be pretty irritated if they came back to find their room all messed up. But I think that that's something interesting that the show could dive into, is the idea of multiple faces in that regard. Like you have Mia with the other living dolls, you have Mia with Sarah, you have Mia as Sarah, and then you have Mia alone. Like what is Mia's quote unquote like true personality, or her personality underneath, when she's not trying to be overly positive for the other living dolls, when she's not trying to like keep Sarah happy, but when she's by herself like in her room, who is she really? And with that, we are done. So I hope that you guys enjoyed my little analysis. Thank you guys for being patient and waiting. I'm in my last week of university. I have one more thing to write, and then I have graduated, hopefully. And so yeah, thank you for struggling with me. I'm struggling a little bit too. It's just a mixture of like that stress sickness that you get sometimes and you're not feeling 100%, but I'm glad that I was able to do this analysis. I think I covered everything I wanted to. Thank you guys so much for watching and all your support during this time. It'll all be over soon, I promise. You guys will see me again. Don't worry. You guys will see me again very soon. And so yeah, thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.